Even by Nintendo standards, this is mysterious. After Pikmin 4 releases, we only have two confirmed first-party Switch titles, both massively delayed games, Metroid Prime 4 and the little-remembered Detective Pikachu 2. So let's put down a marker here and see if we can give a forecast for what's likely and unlikely in the 2023 holiday season. This video is going to assume that there is no new technology this holiday. Obviously, the launch of a new console would change matters considerably, but as the weeks tick away and not the merest sign has emerged of studios getting their hands on dev kits, it seems difficult to believe that new technology is on the cards just yet. In any event, I have a separate video with forecasting for the launch window of the new system, so I'll whack that on the end screen. First, let's see what slots we actually have to fill. While Nintendo would once drop games like Lumpy Custard with long gaps and then big clusters of releases, they have become very good at spacing their games out in recent years. Obviously, the big date to consider is the November game. Usually a Pokemon title, this is almost always their most massive title of the season, as its position means that the advertising cycle coincides with the biggest sales window of the year. They usually have games roughly every 3 weeks in the build-up, meaning 2 games in October and possibly 1 in September. In 2019, they also had one at the end of August, and Ubisoft released the original Mario + Rabbids in August, but that's very unusual. They also often have a December game. I don't think they're usually aimed for December, but it does serve as their last chance to get something in within the holiday window. My hunch is that if they could have released Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 any earlier, they would have done, but December is still a useful window if something slips. So we have at maximum 5 retail slots, and you can see on the screen the kinds of games we've had in these slots over the lifetime of the Switch. I've highlighted in red all the Mario games, in yellow all the Pokemon games, and I bolded all those games which went on to sell 10 million copies or more. Also, games from other publishers, Ubisoft or Sega, are in different colour text. A few things aren't mentioned on here, so for example, eShop games such as the 2019 release of The Stretchers are not included. Plus, holiday DLC has become a big part of their business in recent years. In recent time, even though there have been slightly fewer retail releases than the banner years of 2017 and 2019, these years also coincided with larger DLC releases. So 2020 had Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC, 2021 had Animal Crossing Happy Home Paradise, and 2022 had Mario Kart Deluxe DLC, which will of course conclude this year with Wave 6. Nintendo is absolutely brimming with DLC possibilities again this year, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Mario Kart 8 as I said, but apart from those which are probably a lock, updates for Splatoon 3 and possibly even Tears of the Kingdom would seem to be obvious next steps to bolster their holiday lineup. Remember, this is a particularly important time for Nintendo Switch Online, as Nintendo will want to keep that core Switch base over until the next system is fully established. Plus, it's not Nintendo, but Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope will have a DLC in October. I do think this gives Nintendo a good deal of leeway to scale back their holiday release schedule if they wanted to. Although DLC doesn't sell as well as original games, it does help push the original games, and since most of those games receiving DLC are their massive evergreen titles, those titles have more sales potential than many of the original games that they might be able to drop. However, there are some staples of this holiday calendar. Firstly, note how many of the 10 million plus sellers are from this time of year. Now, Nintendo couldn't have known that these games would go on to sell 8 figures at launch, but they could have given a pretty good guess in most cases. But it seems to me that from 2018 on, there have been 2 titles each year they're looking to for mega sales, and then maybe 1 or 2 others they might have hopes for. 2017 is a precedent for when they didn't have 2 such megaton hit titles, but they were still doing huge sales on Zelda Breath of the Wild that year. Similarly, I expect Tears of the Kingdom still to be pushed as if it were a holiday title. If this is the case, we could have fewer titles. 2022 only had 3 first-party titles, and I could see that being repeated. Metroid Prime 4 feels like it's in the air. If the release of Metroid Prime Remastered was what they call warm-up marketing, then Prime 4 has to be around the corner, and would definitely nip in the bud any complaints about Nintendo having a light quarter. If the next system is not due until holiday 2024, then it makes absolute sense to release it now, but if there's any chance that they could do a cross-gen release, I find it difficult to believe they wouldn't keep Metroid Prime 4 in their back pocket. That kind of game is unlikely to do vast sales, but is brilliant as a prestige project. But they already have Tears of the Kingdom this year. Would the American developers, who are that much closer to the Game Awards than the people in Kyoto, want to compete with Zelda? I'll put Metroid Prime at a 30% chance for now. There are strong rumours of another Fire Emblem title, and while Engage was developed by the core Intelligent Systems Group, some of the senior devs that worked with Koei Tecmo on Three Houses seem not to have been on that game, although some worked on other titles like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Fire Emblem titles don't usually take the holiday spot, but if there's not much else, I'd say there's a low chance of seeing something from this franchise, 30% or so. Yoshi developers Good Feel are also overdue. Yoshi's Crafted World didn't light the world on fire, and I can't see another Yoshi being ready for a while, but they also have worked on Wario Land, and that remains one of the few significant Nintendo franchises not to receive a Switch revival. It would seem bizarre to celebrate the year of a Mario movie with a Wario title, but Nintendo are like that sometimes. At some point I hope to explore Good Feel in more detail, as a lot seems to be happening at that studio in recent years, but for now I'll put Wario Land at a 30% chance. Another possibility is something from Platinum. It will be their second year in a row to have a holiday title, and at this point I have a hunch that they want to wait for the power bump of the new console before releasing whatever they're doing next, so I put that at a 10% chance. Then there were ports or remasters. Xenoblade Chronicles X, possibly a bit soon after Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Punch-Out? Possible, as Next Level developed the Wii version, but there's not really a groundswell of excitement for it right now. The big one being consistently rumoured is F-Zero GX. Such a title will be a bit of a missed opportunity as a graphical showcase of the next system, and perhaps even as a tech showcase if it has a VR component, but I think there's a 70% chance of some kind of port or remaster this holiday, as to which one I couldn't say. It could even be the fabled Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remasters in time for a special trilogy box set released to get those Metroid Prime hardcores to triple dip on Metroid Prime Remastered. Nevertheless, I think the Switch will need at least one megaton seller to anchor it, and we haven't really found one yet. Which franchises could deliver that are likely to be coming? Let's rule out mainline Animal Crossing and 3D Mario. However, a new 2D Mario title would definitely sell astronomically well. Perhaps a Ring Fit Adventure or Switch Sports sequel could do very strong numbers if there's a compelling reason for the purchase, and party titles are usually strong sellers. Another more remote possibility is Tomodachi Life, the 3DS's 10th best-selling title from a developer that has been very quiet for a very long time. Again, I'll drill into the specifics from this studio in a separate video, so like and subscribe for that, but let's just note the possibility for now. With the Switch now close to the end of its life, the time to rack up 8-figure sales is diminishing, but the install base is higher, so it should still be possible. If there's one series that provides a reliable holiday title, it's Mario. It doesn't have to be a first-party title. 2019 had Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, and 2022 had Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. My guess is that Mario and Sonic could be the default again. The Olympics titles don't need to release in the holiday window, but it would dent the sales significantly if they don't. After all, these games are, by their nature, time-limited in a way that most Mario games are not. Most Mario games can continue to sell indefinitely, but it's unlikely that people will be picking up Olympics titles long after the Olympics have ended. Sega has been a good long-term partner for Nintendo on this series, and so my hunch is that unless Nintendo has a very strong Mario game they want to push, they will allow Sega to take the position of the holiday Mario title. If Nintendo really wants to clean up, if I were them, I would be launching, though, a 2D Mario. As I've already covered in other videos, the only way this is likely to me is if Pikmin 4 is not being made internally at Nintendo, as otherwise the devs would almost certainly be tied up with other projects. But Super Mario Bros. Does seem to make sense for lots of reasons. The release of the film, the fact that there has yet to be an original 2D title, the sales track record of 2D games, with even bare-bones ports of bland entries like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe regularly hovering in or around the top-selling dozen or so Switch games, the potential even for multiple sales per household if the experience focuses on handheld multiplayer gaming. The list of good reasons goes on and on. A game like this would be a real anchor point for the entire lineup this holiday. I suppose the arguments against the release of a 2D Mario now is that the games are real evergreens that sell and sell over the long term, and so Nintendo would lose these sales with the next console if they decided to push a Super Mario Bros. Game now, as opposed to in a couple of years' time. Personally, I think the sheer volume of short-term sales they could rack up, added to the fact that the Switch is likely to have a long tail of sales even after the next system releases, and additionally there's a possibility of the games being either forward compatible or receiving a deluxe re-release of the new console, all of these would make it a strong candidate for the next game come what may. However, as logical as it would seem, my feeling is there might not be a Super Mario Bros. Title. These titles have always been glued to the early days of new console, never as a late addition. And as much as Nintendo likes to keep its secrets, I just cannot figure out any advertising rationale, any sales logic for not putting a trailer for a new Super Mario Bros. Game in front of the movie if they do have one up their sleeves. Another factor that might frustrate things in 2025 is Mario's 40th anniversary, and although Nintendo are incredibly inconsistent with anniversaries, it still seems like a big one that they're going to want to mark. Almost certainly there will be a 3D Mario title before then, so it makes sense to anchor Holiday 2025 with a Super Mario Bros. Title, and it will be tricky to turn around a second 2D game in just 2 years if they launch one this autumn. Now, if this team have been working on Pikmin 4, it's a little easier to believe that they could come up with a title in that length of time, because the core Mario team would still presumably have been working on Mario prototypes and ideas all the way through Pikmin 4's development, and so the main bulk of the team would only transfer over when production really ramps up, which would be around now through to 2025, similar to the way Splatoon and Animal Crossing alternate, with core teams remaining to work on both, but the bulk of the team moving from project to project. I've covered the prospects for Mario and different titles that could release in another video, but as for this holiday season, Mario Party is another possibility, but ND Cube, although they're reliable and slightly overdue, possibly aren't likely to release a third Mario Party game on the Switch. It's true that both of those games sold absolute gangbusters, so if they were desperate, it would be the kind of game that would have great success, but I think on balance it's more likely that ND Cube will be branching into a different party game for the time being. Otherwise, the only game that Mario has with really huge sales potential will be Mario Kart, but that's already got DLC coming, and in any event, it seems to be almost guaranteed as a new console title. Mario Baseball or some kind of other Mario sports is unlikely, as it would be so close to the Olympics game, and then there's Paper Mario, possibly that rumoured Thousand Year Door remake, or Mario vs Donkey Kong. However, my hunch is that if they're going to deny Sega the holiday spot, they really need to have a better rationale than launching a Paper Mario remake. At this point, I'm going to put it as 50% that the holiday title is Mario plus Sonic, 30% chance it's 2D Mario, and 10% chance it's Mario Party. The other reliable holiday seller is Pokemon. It's unlikely that there will be another mainline game with Scarlet and Violet DLC still to come out, and the relatively recent releases of Diamond and Pearl from ILCA, and Pokemon Legends Arceus from Game Freak's secondary team. However, Pokemon spin-offs have been quiet recently, and there is a precedent for a September release just before a holiday title in 2017's Pokken Tournament before Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon launched, albeit that these releases were on 2 different consoles. I was expecting another Pokemon Mystery Dungeon for this year already, and it looked like my expectations would pay off when people data mined information pointing to Spike Chunsoft's website suggesting maybe a new game or some kind of new announcement around the time of the February 2023 Pokemon Direct. Now that didn't seem to go anywhere, but I still think another Mystery Dungeon sometime soon is overwhelmingly likely. We also have the game that nobody seems to remember is already announced, Detective Pikachu 2. At this point, it's been almost as long since its announcement as the rebooted Metroid Prime 4, and Detective Pikachu will be a strong contender for the holiday season because of the name recognition of Pikachu. If not this year, it's unlikely there will be another holiday Pokemon slot for several years, but ever since the film was briefly a huge hit, it really doesn't feel like they've done anything to keep Detective Pikachu in the zeitgeist. They may want to save the game to coincide with the film, but they didn't bother last time, and certainly Super Mario Bros. Didn't receive any kind of video game companion either. Are there other options? Possibly. They could surprise us with something new, but the people they'd usually turn to for those surprises have all released games relatively recently. I don't think another Pokken is likely, as Bandai Namco only released new Pokemon Snap in April of 2021. A 2.5-year turnaround time isn't inconceivable, as Bandai Namco is obviously a great studio with resources to push around, and if there's a corner of Nintendo that's comfortable with rushing games to the market to fill a sales window, it's definitely the Pokemon team. But it still feels like a low chance. I'd say there's a 70% chance of a Pokemon release in total, reflecting the lack of Pokemon spin-offs recently compared to their overall frequency, and if there is a Pokemon release, I'd say it's a 50% chance of being a Spike Chunsoft game, which would probably be Mystery Dungeon, and a 30% chance of Detective Pikachu. This means that Nintendo are now down to casual games to carry the sales. Ring Fit Adventure 2 seems to be a very underpriced option. Fitness titles are big profit centers for Nintendo, and there's potential for them to sell additional hardware alongside it, just like the Ring with Ring Fit and the leg straps with Switch Sports. I'd say some kind of fitness title is a 50% chance. So far though, the lineup is looking fairly barren. Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, a niche franchise title like Metroid Prime Trilogy or Wario Land, and a remake like F-Zero GX perhaps. Even if you add the sports titles into the mix, this is not exactly going to carry Nintendo aloft in the sales charts this year. If only there was a title from a studio that was overdue with casual appeal exploiting one of their biggest franchises, and with the potential to sell more than just games but also toys and other expensive accessories which could ameliorate the decline in the Switch's sales. If only there was... In the next video, let's explore what happens if Nintendo do the unthinkable this holiday season.